Hello. Alrighty. We are live, and I'll just give it a few moments here as some people trickle in, and then we will get rolling. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and give it one more minute, and then we will get started. All right, I think we have some people here now. Just give me one moment here, and we'll get rolling. All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you all had a great weekend and are ready for a great week. Thanks for all bearing with me as my schedule changes. So let's go ahead and get to it. We've had some great questions submitted, and the topics range from pooping to beer to math and to weightlifting. So those are all fun topics. So let's dive right in. Our first question is in regards to bowel movements and their frequency changing. Someone had mentioned that their bowel movements have decreased since they started tracking their calories and eating higher protein. They wanted to know if this was to be expected and if they should consider adding more fiber, and if this change is a positive consequence of eating better foods. The answer to all three of these is yes. It can be worrisome when you go through a regular routine bodily change. So I'm glad you brought this up, and I think that everyone can benefit for it. That's why I wanted to kind of answer it in the Hangout instead of through a private message. So this is normal, and it's the result of a few different things going on. So generally, if you're reducing your food intake, there is less food in your system, so you just may have less frequent bowel movements as a result of that. You may also be making better food choices, so there may be less waste being created as a result of those choices. And in addition, a higher protein intake does require more energy to break down, so the digestion process can be a lot longer, so not as frequent. In this case, what I would recommend to anyone experiencing this, even if you aren't worried about it, to make sure that you're getting enough water, to make sure you are eating foods that have fiber in them. And like I mentioned before, there's no real need to track your fibrous veggie intake, but you just may want to look up some nutritional values for the veggies that you are eating regularly so that you have an idea of how much fiber they have. So if you're just eating like plain iceberg lettuce, you're probably really not getting any fiber from it because it's mostly water. So lastly, you can add psyllium husk powder to like a shake, or just mix it with water. This is the exact same thing as Metamucil that you'd find at the grocery store, but it doesn't have any flavoring or any sugar or anything like that. Or you can just get the Metamucil, that's fine too. I buy psyllium husk online on Amazon. It's an add-on item, and it's really cheap, and it's really just a powder you mix in water. If you don't give enough water, it kind of turns into a paste. So I just make sure I get enough water in there and mix it up really good. So adding fiber is something that you want to ease into, or you can end up being really bloated, which is not something that you want to do. So if you're having trouble or just want more fiber in general to feel full, you can get some psyllium husk, or you can look at your vegetable intake that has fiber, or even high. I'm not normally a big proponent of like, oh, you need to get this high fiber version simply for because it's healthier. But in that regard, it might actually be if it keeps you full and it still tastes good and it keeps you regular. So in that case, that's something that you might want to look at. Foods like beans and things like that are always helpful in that regard too. All right, so this was the question I was looking forward to answering. It's in regard to how to fit in beer and other alcoholic drinks into your daily plan. The context of this was someone whose friend had military leave and they wanted to go out and do their normal bar hopping that they used to do. So how to fit that in, since it didn't seem like it would work when you're on a diet. So as you may have noticed, beer is one of my luxury items. So I generally like to have a beer or two as often as I like. And it doesn't require any special modifications other than just simply tracking it and being aware of it. You're not really going to have any issues doing that unless your alcohol consumption becomes excessive, and that excessiveness results in poor choices afterwards. Meaning, like, if I noticed for a while that certain types of drinks, like if I drink too much wine, then I'm going to go and raid my cupboard when I normally would like never do that ever, even drinking beer. So I just would say watch that a little bit. So in these cases, it's helpful to plan ahead as much as you can, like you would for a social obligation. So in the case of like going on a bar crawl, you want to treat it just like any other social event. You probably want to either fast beforehand or eat most of your protein ahead of time. And that really creates a buffer. One of the things you want to do in addition is to make sure that you have lower fat going into it. The reason being is that alcohol is a metabolic poison. So even if you're in a calorie deficit, everything shuts off while your body metabolizes the alcohol. If you overconsume, and I don't mean like a binge, but I mean if you eat and drink more calories than your maintenance, the alcohol is basically going to cause them to be stored as fat. So any fat you take in will likely be stored. Not a big deal. It's not worth worrying about. But if you're regularly drinking, it's something you may want to consider as a strategy, not something you need to worry about if you do that occasionally. So, I mean, I've gone to like parties and picnics where there was crappy free beer. And I've often said out loud to other people that I'd rather drink water than cheap beer. But every once in a while, I'll plan to have more than one or two beers at a social event. Be it like a picnic or a family party or something like that, where crappy cheap beer is the only option. Sometimes I'll just say, you know what, I haven't had Icy Light. That's a Pittsburgh beer. If you didn't know, I'll have Icy Light with my dad because that's the only thing he drinks. So, like I said, just like any other social event, I would fast leading up to it, get in all my protein, but the difference being that I would tend to be lower fat all through. And then I would just enjoy the event without worrying about it. In the event that you overconsume and you overshoot your goals and you did end up making poor choices as a result of drinking, that's fine too. If it's, not a normal occurrence, it's just a single day, not worth stressing about, you can move on. So if you're going to normally have one, I think that's fine. It shouldn't impact your fat loss as long as, you're still hitting your goals. But if you do find yourself drinking more and more frequently, that may be a little bit beyond what we kind of cover in our plan here, because at that point it can start to have some health effects if you're drinking excessively. However, if that is your particular case and you really just want to get drunk without erasing your progress, I'm not encouraging that. There is a website you should check out called Get Drunk Not Fat, and it basically lays out what to drink for the least amount of calories, and it gives them like a rating on the letter scale. So like A+ would be your best bets to get the most alcohol in your system for the least amount of calories. So like I said, in the interest of full disclosure, beer is one of my luxury items. I'm going to have a beer with my evening snack while I watch Walking Dead, and I'm going to go out for wings tomorrow, probably have 1 or 2 more beers. So it's not something I'm saying you should do this. I walk the walk. I drink beer, maybe one a week, maybe more, just depending. It's not something that I particularly shy away from, and I've always been that way. Like I said, I've been at this. So it's not something you need to shy away from. But at the same time, one of the things I did was I used to drink excessively, and as a result, make poor choices. That's part of how I got to over 400 pounds. So one of the primary changes that I made was I never drank crappy beer, but I was kind of like middle tier, I guess. I bought like Moosehead, Guinness. Nothing wrong with Guinness. I love Guinness. But I don't keep it in the house anymore. So the beers that I do keep in the house are rare, and they will be craft beers. So it'll be beers that I'm going to pay more for them, but I'm also going to drink less of them, if that makes sense. So like I said, I do plan on having a beer tonight and 1 or 2 tomorrow, but I'll still hit my calorie goals. I'll still hit my protein goals, and I'll be enjoying them entirely guilt-free, and it will not impact my progress, and I won't stress over it. All right. So the next question was about math and using math to smooth out the curve of weight tracking. The example given was a system like the Hacker Diet that uses a moving average to calculate a trend in the changes in your weight. And I think this is a great idea, and I'll use myself as an example. All along my journey, I used to weigh in for many years, once a week on Saturdays. So since weight can fluctuate so much, even on a given day, depending on how much food you ate, volume-wise, if you had carbs, how much sodium you had, there were Saturdays where I was still in a calorie deficit, but simply due to the combination of food volume, carbs, sodium, etc., water, I showed a weight gain, and it was entirely demotivating. I found myself eventually doing things like subconsciously eating a little bit less on Friday so that I had a good weigh-in, or I would specifically avoid social events on Friday nights for that exact same reason. So after some time and some reflection, I realized this was entirely the wrong behavior to be sustainable in the long term. Because what was I just going to skip having a social life on Fridays because I didn't want to have a bad Saturday weigh-in? And I realized that I did that for a long time, and that's not who I wanted to be. So math to the rescue, I guess. So what I did instead was I weighed in every day, and I looked at the average for the week, and I compared the average to the average. I never really looked at the individual days. After I'd done that for a long period of time, I started to notice patterns in that, for example, no matter what, without fail, no matter how well I adhered to my diet, or even if like I was 100% on, my weight would go up every Tuesday. It would drop to Friday, go up slightly on Saturdays, and then it would start that roller coaster all over again, regardless of what I seemed to be eating. It was just, those were my normal fluctuations. So the averages in that case was incredibly helpful to me. So the danger here is that if you're prone to get anxiety over the numbers, once you have accepted that you're ready to lose weight and then you see those numbers change, that's a very real possibility that that number can cause you to be demotivated or get anxiety over it. So if that's the case, it's possible that even doing an average can cause you anxiety. So I would say that the best way to do it is, what is the path of least stress, least resistance, and least anxiety for you personally? If you would rather just do one weigh-in, that's fine. Let me worry about the numbers for you. I'll help you adjust your plan as necessary. However, if you want to weigh in many times during the week, that's fine. So just weigh in every day, weigh in every other day. It doesn't need to be regular, just so you have some additional data points. And then you can do an average on your own. It would give me additional data points to look at, just some more information to go off of. So the path of least stress for me was doing that average and comparing week to week. What I would ask that you not do is weigh in more than once per day. If you're going to weigh in, please weigh in the mornings, after you go to the bathroom, before you eat anything or drink anything, just so it's consistent. Even if your wake up time varies from day to day, or even varies like on weekends, that's fine. Just keep it as consistent as you can. Don't stress when you're not consistent, but definitely do not weigh in multiple times per day, please. I feel that that's kind of the path to, if you're not worrying about the numbers now and you start doing that, that's the path to getting actual anxiety over those numbers. So please don't do that. I've read horror stories of people that were like weighing their food, the bulk weight of their food, and like afterwards, and then seeing what they weighed after they ate. And that's basically the path to an eating disorder. So please don't do that. So like I said, you can submit multiple weigh-ins per week. To me, that's fine. At least one per week, but if you do more, it's not an issue at all. Whatever is the least amount of stress for you. Part of this entire thing is managing your stress and sleeping as well as you can. So with those two things fall in line, everything else in life should be easier. You are also free to log elsewhere that can do like the pretty graphs and everything. The Hacker Diet's one of them. I think there's a couple other ones. I think maybe Fat Secret might have a graph or something like that. The MyFitnessPal does have a weigh-in feature, but I don't think they do the trend line. I think it just shows. Hey, I don't know what happened. The Chromebook went to sleep even though it was fully charged and I was actively using the mouse. Um, I'm going to pick up right where I left off. If something's going on, you can't hear me or whatever, or if you're not actually seeing anything, just send me an IM on or PM on Photocracy or something. Let me see where we were here. Sorry about that. That was really weird. Oh, okay. I was mentioning that MyFitnessPal, you can weigh in through there. And I did want to mention that even though I do currently calculate the average and I work with the coach to make changes based around that, it's still for me a cause of some anxiety. And it's been one of the things that I've been working hard to overcome. I did get one of those Wi-Fi scales. It's called a Withings. It does automatically connect to MyFitnessPal. So what I do is when I weigh in the morning, I simply stand on it. It recognizes who I am, and it logs the weight on MyFitnessPal automatically for me. I wish there was a mode that I could simply just have it not tell me what the weight was, and then my coach could get the information and then see what my weigh-in was and not have me worry about it. I'd be perfectly happy never knowing day to day or even week to week. With current technology, I still have to get that data to him some way, to be able to make the calorie and protein goal adjustments or whatever. I mean, I guess I could technically put tape over the scale, so I never need to see them, but that seems a little bit extreme for me. But like I said, that's still kind of an issue for me, getting some anxiety over seeing the fluctuations, especially having lost 200 pounds. I know I've mentioned it before, but I'm highly susceptible to gigantic water weight fluctuations where I've seen my scale weight go up 28 pounds in like 3 or 4 days, which is a huge demotivator. Yeah, that's like having erased a quarter of my progress in 3 or 4 days when obviously I could not possibly have eaten enough calories to have gained 28 pounds of fat. It would be basically impossible, but it's still, I understand it's demotivating. And let me just check and see if anyone did send anything to say that. All right, I don't see any private messages coming in. Let me just check one more thing here before I get on to the next question. All right, I didn't see any coming in. All right, so the last question was in regard to weightlifting. And so some people have very similar weightlifting programs that are doing them where they've started with the dumbbell variations in order to get used to weightlifting in general and getting the body primed to and used to those movements. So the specific question was that there were multiple ways to do a dumbbell squat, and basically which is the best way to do it. I prefer the goblet squat variation, where you basically grab the dumbbell underneath the top of it like this and hold it up underneath your chin. And you would basically still be looking up, but bring your chest up and your chin into your chest. So you're basically putting the dumbbell right under your chin and holding it close to you with your elbows together around the base of the bottom of the dumbbell. And then you would simply push your knees out and sit straight down. The goblet squat is I believe the best way to get used to that pattern of sitting up and down with a weight near you. I used to have problems with squat where I would feel like I was bending in half, and I'm 6'2", so the taller you are, a little bit more difficult it can be. And goblet squat has always gotten me into the right position. So I know there was a concern about not being able to use as much weight with that variation, but having that weight right there under your chin and being able to just sit straight down will essentially reinforce proper form and reduce the chance of injury, even if you can't go very heavy yet, or even if you can't go all the way down. It may take repetition over and over and over again with a lighter weight just to be able to get into that form, and that's okay. One of the stretches that I would normally do would be in my hallway from my closet, grab the door handle with both hands and just sit down and back so that I'm essentially just sitting straight down, getting my legs out of the way for my torso to come straight down. And using the doorknob is a great way to do that. And then you could even transition from the doorknob to using a dumbbell and then going up in weight as you're comfortable with the form and how far you're going down. So the second part of the question is related to that. It was about rep ranges. If you feel like you're able to do more, you certainly can. So the example, I 1 to 2 sets of 5 reps. If you feel like you got a lot more in you, please, by all means, I wouldn't go beyond 5 sets of 5 reps or 5 sets of whatever your prescribed reps are for your program. But once you kind of hit that 5 sets of 5 reps, that's probably a good place to stop. And if your form is good at that point, I would say it's time for you to go up in weight. And once you do go up in weight, you can drop back down to 2 sets. And as 2 sets become easier, you can, instead of going up in the weight right away, you can then expand the 2 sets back out to 5 sets. So that way you have 2 different ways to progress. So it's similar to how we measure our fat loss, not by the scale weight alone, but my measurements also. Your weightlifting would have multiple ways to progress. So you would be able to progress by adding weight and resistance, or by volume via reps and sets. So that way it's not just constantly needing to add to get additional resistance, because that could be more difficult if you're not used to weightlifting and you're new to it. And if you're at a calorie deficit, you don't want to, it takes a lot of energy to be in a calorie deficit and burn fat. So you don't want to overdo it too much, especially if you're brand new. We want exercise to be something you enjoy, or if you kind of feel like, oh, I don't want to do this today, I have to add more weight. this way you kind of have multiple paths which to progress and still enjoy it. So, all right. I hope everyone's still with me. I know we had that technology interruption there in the middle, but I'll turn it over to any questions that you have, and I'll just give that a minute. Okay, I did get a confirmation from someone via private message that the video is working fine, so that's good to know. I thought the battery died, but it was fully charged when we started, so I'm glad that wasn't it. I have no idea what happened. I'm just going to give it another minute, but please, if you have any questions, you can submit them now. And as always, if you think of questions, just post them in group, and I'll do my best to answer them. And I will probably schedule the next hangout for a week from Monday, so you'll have a little bit of a break compared to last time, since it was only 3 days since the last one. So let's give it one more minute. Alrighty. Well, we will end there for this evening. Everyone have a great night and great week. Like I said, we'll meet again next week for the hangout, and I'll be interacting with everyone, talking to everyone in the group. So have a good night. Thank you.